What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel we're going to be checking out something pretty cool, my first Tissot. It's the Tissot Visodate. It's a watch that I've been wanting to check out for quite a while now. It's sort of a dual purpose watch in my mind. Yeah, it's a little bit on the dressy side, but I think it's also a great casual everyday watch. It's something that I would most certainly consider wearing on a regular basis, regardless of the situation, other than maybe some, I don't know, extreme sporting type of activities. It's certainly not a sports watch, but for the majority of us, I think this would fill the purpose of being a casual everyday watch all the way up to a little bit more of a formal or dressy watch. It's a watch, again, that I've been wanting to check out for a while now, and I never pulled the trigger on it. I was a little hesitant about it, mainly because of the size, because it's 40 millimeters in diameter. And I always thought, I prefer watches that are a little bit smaller. I just didn't know if I'd like how the 40 millimeter fits on my wrist. Well, luckily, one of you guys, a viewer, has sent me a couple of watches, and included in that package was this Tissot Visodate. So I now have the opportunity to check it out and share with you guys. I can say definitively that the 40 millimeter size is not a problem for me now. It wears a lot smaller than a 40, and I'll explain why when we jump over to the tabletop. But suffice to say that, yeah, I have it here. I really like it. I've been enjoying it, and I'm giving it 2 thumbs up. If you want the short version of my review, it's definitely a cool watch. Before we hop over to the tabletop view and I give you a close look at this watch, I did want to mention that pretty soon, in the next week or so, I'm running a little behind schedule. I was hoping to get to it by the 1st, but moral of the story is I'm going to be doing a giveaway. I have a couple of watches that I'm going to give to one viewer, and the way that you'll be eligible to win is if you're a member of the Facebook group Horology 101. I'll include a link to that Facebook group down in the description of this video. The guys over at the Hamilton Watch Owners Group, who have loaned me a couple of watches in the past, started up this new general watch group, Horology 101. And I said, hey, I'm going to do a giveaway. I was planning to do it anyway. How about I make eligibility requirements to be, any member of the Horology 101 Facebook group. So if you're not a member of Horology 101 on Facebook, go over there and join that now, because sometime in the next week, I'm going to formally announce my 2-watch giveaway. You want to be in that group in order to be eligible. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump over to the tabletop view. I'm going to show you this Tissot Visodate up close, give you the specs, features, functionality, all the rest of it, and then we'll come back over here for my closing thoughts. Alright guys, here we have the Tissot Visodate. Reference number, if you're curious, T019.430.16.031.01. Don't we love those extremely long reference numbers? MSRP on this watch comes in at $650, but I have found it available at retail for significantly less than that. Most of the places that I've checked are below $400. I think it comes in right at about $399 on Amazon right now. If you're interested in picking it up on Amazon, I'll have a link down in my description, which goes through my affiliate link. Just so you know, I do get a small commission if you decide to buy something through Amazon before you click on that link. I would appreciate it. First thing I'll touch on this watch is the basic specifications and measurements. We have a 40 millimeter case diameter with 20 millimeter lugs. We have a pretty good thickness at only 11.5, and lug to lug from one end of the case to the other we get 47 millimeters. Overall a really good size. I like the way that this fits on the wrist, despite the fact that it is a little bit larger than what I typically would pick. 40 millimeters, on paper sounds big, but it doesn't really wear big, and I'll explain why in a few minutes here. The other specifications about this watch, we have a 316L high polished stainless steel case. We have a domed sapphire crystal, which does not have, unfortunately, any anti-reflective coating. We'll talk about that more in a minute. We have a silver dial with stainless steel handset and markers, and the dial to me presents more white than silver, honestly, but I'll touch on that as well. There is an exhibition case back, which I'll show you here shortly. This watch runs the ETA 2836-2 movement, which is a 25 joule movement. Runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is an automatic with hand winding and hacking. This movement has a 38-hour power reserve, and according to the Tissot manual, will have an accuracy range of between -10 to +30 seconds per day, so not too bad. This watch does, of course, have the day and date complication over at the 3 o'clock position. And finally, it comes on an Alligator embossed leather strap with butterfly clasp. I'm going to touch on that strap first real quick. As you can see here, this is a leather Alligator embossed strap, but I don't know if it's the original strap that comes with it or not. I asked the viewer that sent it to me if it is, but you can see this is supposed to come with a butterfly clasp, and here we just have a standard pin buckle. Regardless, if this is maybe an older model that came with this strap originally or not, I'm not entirely certain. So I did want to touch on that really quick first thing. So the 316L stainless steel case, which is completely high polished, is again 40 millimeters, but as I had mentioned a second ago, it does not present like a 40 millimeter watch on the wrist. And here, let me give you a profile view. I'm going to hold the watch like so. You see the sides of the case, how they slope up? It's almost like a kettle shape. Well, if we take a measurement at the top of the watch, basically at the edge of that kettle shape from here to here across the dial, I get a measurement of 37 millimeters. So really this watch wears quite a bit more like a 37 or 38 millimeter watch than it does a 40. Again, we'll look at the profile here, and yeah, down at the most wide portion of the case here, it is 40 millimeters, but you don't get that sense of a 40 millimeter watch on your wrist. I think that's a really big benefit to this watch. Now, the finishing of the case, this one is a little bit rough because it's obviously pre-owned, pre-loved, if you will, but it is a nice high polish finishing throughout the entire case. No complaints with it. The lugs are not very thin, but they're somewhat delicate. They're not really thick, oversized lugs, and the lug-to-lug width from the top to the bottom here is a kind of short 47 millimeters, which also makes it wear a bit smaller than you might expect. At least it does in my opinion. Now over on the right hand side of the case we have the crown. It is signed with a Tissot T, as you can see there, and then the polishing otherwise is basically the same. The crown I want to talk about briefly. It is of course not a screw down crown, which is fine by me, but it is very undersized, and if I get in here a little bit closer you can see the complaint that I have with it is hand winding it, and this is of course a hand wind movement. Getting a good purchase on that crown, it's a little bit difficult. If you go for 40 full winds like you might do to charge up your watch's power reserve to 100%, probably going to have sore fingers by the end of it if I'm being honest. It's not so small that you can't manipulate it. It's not though as if it's unusable, but it is a little bit undersized in terms of how far it sticks out from the case. The overall diameter of it is okay. It's not like a little tiny thing. But yeah, a little bit on the difficult side to manipulate. Other than that though, the hand winding action is very good. You can feel the ETA movement, has a very familiar feel to the hand winding, no problems there. Of course, pulling the crown out to the first position lets you quick set the date, and pulling the crown out to the second position hacks the movement as you can see here, and you can set the time as you see fit. We'll go ahead and get the handset out of the way here so we can see the rest of the dial just fine. Push the crown back down, and there you go, it's off, back and running. Now, I want to touch on the crystal really quick. Sapphire crystal, which is a big bonus, but just like all of the Hamilton watches that I've reviewed, and this, of course, Tissot is a member of the Swatch group. Swatch owns Hamilton as well as a number of other brands, including at this tier or level, Mito and Certina, which I've never seen a Certina watch, but I did review a Mito dive watch in the past, and I liked it quite a bit. Obviously, as you can tell, I like this watch quite a bit too, but the complaint that I have with all of the other watches in this tier from the Swatch group is that the crystals have a lot of reflection. This one is no different, but there is an upside. And that is that this is covering a white dial, so the reflectivity of the crystal is less of a problem than it has been on black dial watches from that middle to entry-level tier from Swatch Group. So I don't have a real big problem. I mean, I'm looking straight here. You can kind of see the reflection of my camera right in there. I don't even know if it's picking up very well here, but suffice to say that because it's a white dial, it's still very legible, and it's not a big problem. That is a plus side to this watch in particular, and I guess, as I'm now realizing, other white dial watches. If you're dealing with a really reflective sapphire crystal, maybe, consider a white dial watch like this one. Other than that, though, it's a great crystal. It's definitely super clear. No problems there. Sapphire is, of course, very scratch resistant, so that's a plus, and I appreciate the fact that we do have it. If we get in kind of close here around the edge of the crystal, it's very common that you would have bezel, probably a smooth bezel on a watch like this, but on a dive watch, you'd have a rotating bezel. There's really no bezel to speak of here. The crystal goes almost all the way out to the edge of the case. I actually kind of like that, and generally I would say that I'm not a fan of watch cases without some sort of smooth bezel, but it really does work here. I have no complaints with that. So going past the crystal, we'll talk about the dial a bit. This is supposed to be a silver dial, and I don't know how it's going to present here on camera, but to my eyes in person, it's a white dial for all intents and purposes. If there's silver in it, it's very subtle. Maybe I would consider it an off-white or a dark white, if that's such a thing. But yeah, if you asked me what color is this, I would say it's white. That said, Tissot, in their marketing literature, calls it a silver dial, so I guess we'll say it's a silver dial. There's not really a whole lot of texture or grain to it. I'll zoom in a little bit closer so you can see it. It's pretty much a flat white dial in my opinion. So zoomed in nice and tight here, you can see that white dial, or as they call it, silver. It's great looking, I like it. We have these high polished stainless steel markers and, again, high polished Dauphine hands. The second hand is basically just a thin needle-like second hand with the exception of that little, I want to call it an acorn, honestly, on the counterbalance side. I suppose maybe it's some sort of broadhead arrow. I don't know the proper terminology for what they put on the counterbalance there, and I don't know if it has any sort of representative significance to the Tissot brand. But other than that, you have a very simple, straightforward handset. Again, high polished stainless steel, it looks great. On the dial itself, you have the applied Tissot logo, also high polished stainless steel, and imprinted below it on the dial, Visodate, and then at the bottom, automatic. Over at the 3 o'clock side, of course, we have the day and date complication, and that is outlined in a nice stainless steel frame. It looks good. All of the markers are as well stainless steel, polished, and with the exception of the 12, 3, 6, and 9, you have single baton-like markers with double batons at those other positions. Overall, the presentation of the dial is pretty simplistic. I guess I should also mention that there is a very simple seconds track on the outer edge of the dial with one hash mark for each individual second or minute. If I had any complaints with this dial and handset, it would probably be the minute hand. It's a little bit on the short side, and it's sort of deceptively difficult to notice here because it's pointing directly at the 45-minute mark. So I'm going to go ahead and advance it another minute or so and let you see that up close. So I've gone ahead and advanced that minute hand so that you can see it is very, very far from touching the minute or second track on the outer edge of the dial there. In comparison to another really popular and very similar watch from Seiko, the SARB 035, which is a white dial, kind of casual to dressy watch in the same price point. The minute hand on that watch does reach out much closer to that seconds track or chapter ring. I wish that the minute hand on this watch was just a hair longer. It doesn't have to go all the way out to the edge, but I think it would balance better if it was just a touch longer. We'll take a look at that exhibition case back, which is showing off the ETA 2836-2 movement. The movement itself is not extremely well decorated. You have a gold tone rotor there with the Tissot branding and just a little bit of Côte de Genève decoration on that rotor. Other than that, it's pretty simple, very utilitarian. There's not even any significantly highlighted or blued screws or anything like that, but it is a standard ETA movement, basically a day-date version of the 2824-2. It's a great movement, it's a workhorse, everybody loves it. The rest of the case back, pretty well undecorated, just a little bit of inscription. You have the Tissot name, sapphire crystal, and a few other markings such as water-resistant 30 bar and stainless steel. So yeah, I was a little bit hesitant. I've been interested in this watch for a while, but that 40mm case size always kind of worried me. I prefer watches that are maybe more in the 36 to 38mm range when we're talking about kind of casual or dressy watches. But for sure, this one wears on the wrist much smaller than that. I'm going to bring in an actual 36mm watch and set it side by side with this. And, you can kind of see the differences on how they present. So to the left, we have the Tissot Visodate, again, 40mm case diameter. To the right, we have a Seiko Quartz. The reference number escapes me off the top of my head, but it is a 36mm watch. Side by side here, they don't look a whole heck of a lot different. Sure, you can probably pick up that the Tissot is a little bit bigger, but not significantly. And on the wrist, while the Seiko does feel a bit smaller because it's a quartz and it's thinner and lighter, the Tissot doesn't wear significantly larger to me, and I really like that. I think that any watch between 36 and 40mm, as long as it's proportioned appropriately, would work fine for my 6 3/4 inch wrist. And I guess the moral of the story is just because it might say on paper that it's a little bigger than maybe you're comfortable with, give it a chance. That might have some things going for it in one direction or the other that makes it wear differently. So yeah, there's a couple of little things that, I don't think are perfect. The minute hand could be a touch longer. The crown is a little bit small and a little bit difficult to manipulate, but overall I really do like it. The Visodate is known for having the day and date complication, and the day and date complication on this watch is perhaps a little oversized in comparison to some other watches. I do appreciate that because honestly my eyes are getting a little bit older, and having something that's a little bit easier to read works for me. I don't think that it throws the balance of the dial off in any terrible way as compared to any other day-date watch anyway. Sure, it's not perfectly symmetrical. Maybe it would be cool if it had no day and date at all, but then again, its namesake is of course Visodate, so without a day and date, they'd have to probably change the name. That said, I do really like this watch. I like the way that it wears. Stylistically, aesthetically, I think it looks fantastic. I would definitely consider owning one of these, and I might consider it myself. So in closing, what would I say about the Tissot Visodate? Well, I think it's a fantastic watch. In particular, if you're looking for that dual-purpose, double-duty kind of watch, something that you can wear kind of casually on a daily basis, and something that would dress up and work as a little bit more of a formal watch. I think that it's worth noting that an extremely popular watch that has recently been discontinued, the Seiko SARB 033 and 055, are going to be harder and harder to find. And in my opinion, this is an excellent alternative to that watch. If you're unable to find one of those Seikos and you're looking for something in this roughly $400 price range to serve that same double-duty purpose of being a casual daily watch and a little bit dressy, I would most certainly highly recommend looking into this watch. I'm honestly really blown away by it. Now, I have looked at the black dial version on the website, on the internet, and I don't think I like that one quite as much as I like this white dial. I guess technically this is considered a silver dial, but to my eyes, when it's on the wrist, it just feels like a white dial, maybe slightly off-white. Certainly doesn't feel like a really strong silver to me. That's a good thing in my opinion. I wanted it to be a white dial, so I'm glad that it looks more white, at least to my eyes. Your mileage may vary. But yeah, the black dial version, I find that one to be a little bit less appealing. On the other hand, when we're talking about that Seiko SARB 033, the black dialed SARB, I sort of prefer that one to the 035 white dial. That's just me. Again, your mileage may vary. But the reason that I want to bring up that black dialed version of the Visodate is I think it's going to have some legibility problems, and here's why. I had a Hamilton khaki navy scuba a while back. It was a really cool watch. I liked it quite a bit. Eventually I decided to sell it though. And the reason why is because I felt that the legibility was not outstanding. And there's two reasons. First of all, because Hamilton watches have a lot of glare in their sapphire crystal. And this Tissot watch also does. But that's mitigated somewhat by the white dial in my opinion. The second reason that I think that the black dial would be less preferable is because it has high-polished stainless steel markers, and like that Hamilton, I found that that was a negative in terms of legibility against a black dial. In low light, it was very difficult to pick up the stainless steel markers against that black dial. So you have a lot of glare on the crystal in bright light, and you have somewhat of a difficult time picking up those stainless steel markers in dark light. I think that would be a problem with the black dial Visodate, and that's why I would recommend this white dial. It's why I really like this white dial version. We sort of touched on price briefly, I guess, and MSRP on this Tissot Visodate is roughly $650 if I remember correctly off the top of my head, but in looking around online, I found it available at most of the common dealers that you would think to look for between $375 and $400. I think on Amazon it was right at $399. If you're interested in picking up this watch or anything else that I've ever reviewed in the past, down in the description of this video and every video that I do have links to Amazon. They are links through my affiliate account, and if you decide to purchase something, I do get a small commission, and that really does help out the channel. So if you like this watch and you're thinking about buying one, consider buying it through my Amazon affiliate link. That would help me out a great deal. Alright guys, with that I'm going to close this video out. I appreciate you guys checking it out. I hope you liked this video. I want to thank again the viewer that loaned me this watch. I appreciate it very much. Thank you again for that. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. If you guys want to support my channel, don't forget my Amazon affiliate links can be found down in the description of this video. If you want to help support the channel, click on that link before you go to Amazon and I get a small commission. Number two, if you'd like to help me out through Patreon, I would really appreciate that. I could definitely use some more support over there. that would be a humongous help. Number 3, if you want to contact me to loan me watches, my email address can also be found in the description down below. And finally, please do follow me on all my social media accounts. I have links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and everything else down in the descriptions of all of my videos. Until next week, thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it. We'll see you soon. Bye now.